everyone and welcome to my channel. Something a little bit different today. I'm in my DIY outfit because we're going to be making over this Sylvanian house. So I got this little house as a gift. The plan is to do it up as a sewing shop. It was purchased like that. I've got lots of lovely little bits of furniture for the sewing shop to put in when it's ready, but I wanted to do the outside. I just wanted to look a little bit more textured, realistic, and like people actually live there. So, first step is to take all the bits off that we don't want to get painted. Sorry guys. I don't seem to be able to get the door off. I'll have to tape over it. So we're going to start off with giving all this a good sanding. I recommend to do this outside because you don't really want to inhale this dust. This will just help the paint to stick. So now that's all pleasantly roughed up, we're just going to give it a quick wipe over with a damp cloth to remove any debris, and then we can get on with the fun part. So to start off with, I've got some polyfill because I don't really want the brickwork and things down here, so I'm just going to smooth that out to make it look more like a whitewashed old building. So for this I'm using a palette knife. Don't worry if it's a little bit lumpy as you go along because you can sand it down later once it's hardened. It's really good stuff. This is not the first time I thought I might have missed my calling as a plasterer. If you do get any bits that you weren't planning on smoothing over, it's really simple to fix while it's wet. You can either scrape it off with a palette knife, or if it's something a bit more delicate, like for example around this window shutter, you can just use a bit of kitchen towel or a cloth and just wipe that off. Again, it doesn't matter if there's still like white on it, it's more about maintaining the moulding underneath. As you can see, I have taken off any excess just around the window frames to make sure that the windows do go back in. Polyfiller takes 2 hours to be touch dry and about 24 hours to be completely dry all the way through, at which point you can sand it. But I am going to paint the rest of the house white with just a basic emulsion. It's house paint, because I won't need to paint over the polyfiller because that will work perfectly fine as a base coat. You can paint right on top of it. I'm just using this soft bristle house painting brush and just making sure to not leave any gaps. For now I'm only painting the exterior of the house because the interior I need to plan a little bit more what I want to do with it. You can use this sort of stippling effect to get in all the cracks, especially on this roof piece. I'm not sure why it's textured like that. I imagine it's so you can stick another piece on top. Don't overload your brush, you don't want big globby bits. If you need more than one layer to get it completely opaque, that's okay. But the first layer really is just getting into all the nooks and crannies, and also to check that the paint is definitely sticking. But thin layers is better, then you don't lose all the nice moulding detail. So my house is now completely painted white. I might come back and do a second coat if I don't think it's sticking very well. I've also done both sides of the door, but I'm making sure to brush upward to hopefully give it a wood grain effect when it is finally done. Also, I'm leaving this door open while it dries so it doesn't stick. So now that that's all painted, I might come back again like I said, we'll leave that to dry and then we get to doing the decorating. So while we're waiting for the house to dry, we're also just painting over a white base coat on these little pieces that get stuck on afterwards. So I've slightly sanded down the polyfiller just so it looks slightly more like actual lime wash and less like some mad woman who's just polyfillered a Sylvanian house. So you can see the difference between the two, just there. And around this side where it's done, I think it looks really rather good and very accurate. As opposed to this side, which is still a bit manky looking. This has now been drying for a couple of hours. As you can see, I've changed my shirt, it's got a little bit colder. So we're going to start off by painting the base coat of the roof. So I've got quite a dark slate grey here that I've just mixed. It is the emulsion and a little bit of India ink. I wanted it to be quite sort of flowy for this top layer. Put that down. And to get a bit of texture in there, we're going to add a couple of spoons of baking powder, which just gives it a bit of a sort of grittier, more slate-like texture. So just a spoonful of that in there. And don't get any more paint on the spoon. Yes, that's mixed in quite thoroughly. It looks a bit like concrete. Then we just take our brush. I've also got a little sponge just in case I need it, and start painting the roof with it. So if you're worried that it looks quite dark, oops, sorry, I'll let you see that. If you're worried that it looks quite dark, don't worry, this is just so that when we dry brush on top of it, you get lots of sort of nice texture. Slightly disturbingly, the bicarb is fizzing. So now I'm going to mix up a blue that looks a little bit like the house there, because I think that looks really pretty, and it's Eastern European sort of traditional painted houses, and I just think they're gorgeous. So that's kind of part of the vibe. Motorbikes. I'm hoping to get here. So I'll mix up a blue. And here is the base coat for our lovely blue shutters. Good morning everyone, it's the next day and I'm back and everything's dry. Now I wasn't actually planning on rushing through this project. I wanted it to be a sort of nice, slow, take your time, quiet thing, but I'm really quite stressed with a couple of work things and general life stuff going on at the minute, and I find this is really relaxing, so I'm going to carry on with this. So now we're going to start dry brushing the roof, just to give it a little bit more depth and make it look more interesting. So I've got a lighter shade of grey just here, and you just take a little dab on the brush, wipe off quite a lot of excess on a little cloth or a bit of kitchen paper as I have here, and then you just very gently start picking out little details. Like that, if you can see there. I'll get a close-up shot for this as well. You might also notice that I've carried on painting the doors, everything with their base colour. I couldn't sleep last night, so I just decided to get on with it. But enough of me rambling, you just want to watch me paint the house. It's just a very quick look at the difference between the dry brushed and the not dry brushed side, and you can see how much more lifelike it makes it. And there's our roof all dry brushed. I think it looks fantastic, but I think it needs a little something else, so I'm going to add a little bit of moss just with a little stippling of some sort of very muted green, and we'll see how that looks. So to add some extra moss texture, I'm just cutting tiny little pieces off these bits of yarn in a couple of different colours to add some variety. And we just take some glue and a cotton bud and gently dab that on. And then stick some of our moss to it. Now the roof is done, I can also paint in my upstairs windows. So I've quickly taped up the door just to protect it while we do the main body of the walls. So I've mixed these two paints here just to add some undertone to it. So this is just going to be another stipply dry brush type job, and I'm going to especially focus on the little divots. So I know it looks pretty alarming when you get started, but it is going to be fixed later on in the process. So we're just going to leave the finish like that because that's all going to be covered up when we do a sponging of white on the top. So we just carry on. I'm especially focusing on putting this orange in the areas that would have shadow. That's like at the bottom of the building. And up here under the eaves, and also under where the window's going to be. Okay, so it might look a little bit alarming now, but don't worry, it will be fixed in the next step. So now that this is all looking thoroughly mad, to be honest, we're going to take this little makeup sponge that I've ripped the end off of to give it a bit more texture, and dip it in white emulsion paint that we were using yesterday as the base coat. So just dip that in, blot the excess off, and just start dabbing over. You can build this up in thin layers until it's the colour that you want. So there's a couple of places, like up in here, where I can't quite get in. So I'm just going to take the same brush we've been using throughout and just build up in here. So that's almost where I'd like it, but I think I would like to go over it with another layer of white just when this is dried down a little bit. So while that's drying down, I'm just going to dry brush the now painted upper windows and also the extra shutters and windows that are going to be finished on later. So now it's time to paint our side windows. And now that that's all done, we're going to put our windows back in again. So we're now dry brushing with a only just off-white. I'm starting by dabbing it into these little divots. And then especially going in around the edges where there's likely to be shadows. Slightly under this here. Slightly under this bit. And up to the bottom of the thing. It's now day 3 and the house is, I think, looking pretty good already, but I'd like some stonework just here down at the front. So I've taken an egg box and just ripped tiny little chunks out of it. You get a really nice sort of stone-like effect with lots of different layers. So we're just going to glue those down, apart from directly in front of the door, because I want the door to be able to open. I'm just going to glue this little strip of writing paper just in front of the door to allow it to swing. So, have a look. I'm going to start by taking my glue, which is the only glue I've got, wrestling the top off of it, putting a tiny little dab down here, and spreading it out with a Q-tip, so I'm not wasting any of my good brushes on this. Then we're going to carry on doing this in sections, but with our little bits of egg box. So I'm really just tiling them together in a way that I think looks nice. And I'm not going to worry too much about if it goes over the edge, because I can always snip that off later. So if you're doing it with a little corner like this that you haven't got a bit that will fit, just rip off another piece and stick it on there. So we just leave that until they're dry, and then we'll cut off these excess bits. So while our stonework is drying, we're just going to mix up a little stain for our beams, which are made of lolly sticks and these stolen coffee stirrers. That was already a little bit stained. You're right there. So I'm just taking an empty fennel seed pot and mixing up quick brown. So these are just acrylics. Trying to find the best way to mix a nice warm brown is to start off with a good orange, more yellow than that I think. Then add a teeny tiny drop of blue, which is good because I haven't got much left. You can actually see the brown a little bit better at the sides. So that's the sort of nice chocolate that I was aiming for, but we're going to darken it up ever so slightly. So I'm just going to add a very small dash of black India ink. Just to get that really sort of old weathered wood look. And then we're going to top it up with a little bit of water. Until that's well mixed. I'll take a bit of paper and give it a little test. I think I'd like it slightly thinner so I can always layer up later. And we simply take our beams and give them a spoon. Leave that to dry over there, probably without getting acrylic paint in my coffee. While we're waiting for our beams to dry, I'm just going to cut these bits off at the end. I'm not worried too much about these scratches because that's all going to get painted over anyway. But next we're going to mix a nice sort of tanny beige colour for the base colour of these stones. So there's our tan colour, a beigey colour. So we're just going to bring that on. Now it's more waiting for things to dry. I've got these colours for my stones, so really I'm just going to with a fairly dry brush and just colour each stone individually. This is now touch dry but not completely dry, so I've watered down the same wash that I've used for my wood. Watered it down quite a lot, probably about half again more water. I'm just going to drop that on there to weather it a bit and blot off any excess with this tissue. You can see the difference between the two sides there. It just makes it look a little bit more realistic, I think. I'm just putting a little bit extra just where the stones meet the wall. Just add a little bit more depth into it. So now we're getting to the bit I'm most nervous about. So we're doing some really fine detail work just on here. So I've actually got a nail art brush for this bit. And, well, wish me luck. After doing all this, as you can imagine, my back was absolutely killing me. I had to stop like every 15 minutes or so just to straighten up. In total, it took maybe about an hour to do all this. So I've got it to 100 times speed for you there. Now that's almost all our outdoor painting done. So now it's time to add on our little beams. I'm just going to start by snipping off these little end bits. Ooh! And we are actually going to keep those for maybe using them for something else. So I shall put them in here with the moss. These are all now cut to size. So now it's just time to glue them on. Now it's time just to add a couple of final touches to really bring the whole thing together. I'm using this brass metallic paint on the door handle and on the letterbox. And our final addition, this little sign.
We're finally here, Rosie. Take a look.
Oh, Angus, it's perfect. Our own shop.
Ladies first.
Well, I suppose it could use some work.
So this is the finished exterior of our little house. This is sitting on just an old piece of shelving I had, and this is a piece of paper to continue the path. I'll probably do something more permanent later on, but this looks good enough for now. So a couple of things I'd do differently if I was to do this again would be I'd draw around the windows first before I take them off, so that I don't polyfiller in the areas where the window's going to sit, because it's quite a tight squeeze now. So they do seem to be staying in place, but it was a bit of a struggle to push them in. I think also I made all of this with material I already had around the house, so all the paint I already had from painting projects, the polyfiller we already had, the house paint we already had, this was wool I already had, so all of it's just, you know, for free stuff I had lying around. But I think I would use white spray paint as the base coat if I was to do this in future. But all in all, I'm really happy with it, and I hope you join me for part 2 when we do the interior of the house. So it's goodbye from me and goodbye from Bee. Until next time. Bye! So I got this as a gift with the aim that I would fix it up. No, that's not what I wanted to say. So what did you do today? Not much. Just lime washed a Sylvanian house with polyfiller. Polyfiller takes 2 hours to be touch dry and about 24 hours to be bastard. Sorry, horsefly.